Okay, well, here we are, Monday, time to go again. All right, so over the weekend, I had assigned to you the a test, if you will, a quiz test, call it what you want. And let me see here if I can pull it up. I know I can, it's just a matter of time to do it. And quizzes. There we go. Module 1 instructor quiz. And here we go. This is what it is. So I tell you what, we can go over it now since it's past due. And this is what was due. So you guys can help me out if you want. What is a stoichiometric mixture? Anybody want to answer that one?
Chemically correct mix of fuel and air.
All right, I'll take that. A chemically correct mixture of fuel and air. We can expand on that and say one in which there is no extra fuel and there is no extra air.
Also, isn't it 15-1? That's why I had the notes.
It's what?
It could be 15 parts of air.
15-1.
Yeah, I would be looking for something other than just the word 15-1.
Yeah.
All right, what is the leanest and richest mixture, leanest and richest fuel to air ratios that can be used in a gasoline piston engine?
8-1 and
8-1.
8-1 on one end. Is that rich or lean?
Rich.
And lean goes all the way to?
18.
18.
18.
Oh,
Kevin, what did you say?
I was about to say 16, but I remember I did put 18. I believe I put 18.
All right, I will accept 16 because I believe that's what your textbook says.
Will you accept 18?
Yeah, 18 is,
18 is my answer.
Oh, okay.
That's because more textbooks I have say 18, plus it's easier to remember 8 and 8. 8 to 18 than it is to go 8 to 16 because then it's like, well, wait a minute, is it 6 to 8? So, but if you read it out of your textbook, it says 16, which I will accept. But best answer, according to me, 8 to 18. All right, describe the difference between best economy mixture and AA best power mixture. We should like edit that. So.
Best economy will produce greatest amount of power.
Okay.
Best power will produce maximum power.
Say that again.
So the economy will produce greatest amount of power, most miles per gallon.
Most miles per gallon. That's what we want right there. Best.
Oh.
Best miles per
Most
gallon.
economical mix and best power is the most power it's going to produce.
Yeah.
What I put, because I read it in the textbook saying that it's the economy would also give you the desired airflow to the engine.
Oh, you fell.
Yeah, I messed that one up. And power was the greatest power that there is.
Okay. So I'm going to change the points to like 10 points per each. So I can do that right now. So, hang on.
Hey, Kevin, I made a typo. So one of the question I made a typo. I can after you graded, I can call you and plead my case or what.
Buy some cookies.
I know. I'm out of cookies. I still have some peanuts left, but I'm out of cookies. I'm just telling you.
You know what? I stopped going to Costco after we moved to online.
Really?
Really, I
They're
stopped.
still open though.
Yeah, they're still open. They even write me letters saying that they miss me. But
Revenues. I know. I sold my stock. If you're not going, I'm selling my stock. Okay. What is meant by operating 50 degrees rich of peak? Anybody want to take that one?
cylinder head temperature is high, uses more fuel than best economy, but very close to maximum power.
I'm worried about using the cylinder head temp in that one. Anybody else?
I put it 50 degrees rich of the highest EGT temperature when leaning.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that one. That works. So rich of peak, I need to see something about EGT because when we talk about that, it's really EGT in there. Rich of peak. You know what? I'm just going to do this. Let me see. Rich of peak, EGT. I think that because what I'm hearing from PK is that he was thinking about it in terms of CHT. And quite honestly, there's an argument to be made where somebody could say, yeah, I operate 50 degrees rich of peak CHT. You could do that, especially with the gauge I have in my aircraft.
Well,
How
see,
does
it changes as 10 point for us, right?
yeah, everything's going 10 points. That way I can give you like partial credit.
Hey, Kevin, but this this is exact. You remember the chart that you had?
Yes. Yes.
So on that one, you also wrote on your video, you also wrote like notes next to it, like in red ink.
Uh-huh.
But you know what? We all talked about the EGT, even though you did not write that. I should have added that in my answer, but I forgot to do that.
I know, but I just want to, that's why I'm rewriting a little bit. Like when I just changed it to peak EGT on that question, that's really a change for next year when I go through it.
Got it. Okay.
When I do it this year, I'm going to look at it and think, okay, well, it didn't really say EGT at that point. So if you're talking about CHT or something, then I can give points for it rather than getting to that point and then having to mark it off. So, all right. Let's see, got that one. Good question. Oh, how does a mechanic determine if the idle mixture is set correctly on a Marvel Schebler carburetor? Well, first of all, you should wonder, or you shouldn't wonder. You should know right away why I selected to be specific about a Marvel Schebler and not a Stromberg.
It doesn't have one.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Stromberg. Why would I not put that one in there?
Because it doesn't have an idle cutoff.
There you go. It doesn't have an idle cutoff. It'd be very difficult. So how do we determine if the idle mixture is set correctly?
Run idle.
Do the run idle test.
All right. Do the run idle test. Can you be more specific?
Run the engine in idle.
Let's get Jace have this one. Go ahead, Jace.
I would pull the idle cutoff and then watch the RPM gauge. It goes up a little bit before it cuts off.
Very good. How much is a little bit?
About 50 RPM.
All right, about 50. I like that one. Okay. That's what I'm looking for. This one, the float level in a Stromberg carburetor is called out to be 0.406. I literally did this one with you guys. From the parting surface, the check reveals that it's 0.331 inch. 1 unit of shim alters the fuel level 5 units. Should shims be added or removed? Well, if it is at 406, should be at 406, and a check reveals that it's 331, that is higher. The float is too high, so we add or remove shims. We add, so it's just backwards. If the float level's too high, then raise the seat. Well, that doesn't make sense, but that's what you do. Raise the seat, and so what size shim to be added or removed? It's 406 minus 331 divided by 5, and there's the answer. What are the two circuits in a float carburetor?
Idle and non-idle.
Okay, idle and non-idle. I will take that. I say idle and off-idle more often than not, but that works. Two types of accelerating systems.
Well and pump.
Very good. Well and pump. Explain the terms economizer and power enrichment. This is probably the longest potential writing question there was in here. Anybody gonna handle this one?
So I wrote exactly what you wrote, which is economizer is equal to leans out the carburetor, power enrichment equal to makes the carburetor richer.
When?
At high power.
Above
Either
cruise.
Leaning out during cruise and then enriching at full throttle.
Yep, that's what I want to do. I want to see something about economizer decreases the amount of fuel through the cruise range, and power enrichment adds fuel at upper RPMs. Oh, and Nick said the shim answer was 0.015. I believe that is correct. Well, he believes it's correct, that's for sure. And last question. What is my last question?
Is it removed there? Should be add.
Oh, it should be. Yeah, it is. It's add, Nick. I just keyed in on the numbers. Okay. Assume you are flying an aircraft with a fixed pitch propeller. Explain the sequence of events that will happen as the aircraft develops carburetor ice. Explain the symptoms of carburetor ice, what the corrective action is, and what you will experience, see, and feel through the events to clear the ice. Actually, this is probably, it took me longer to write this than it would take you to answer it.
Yep, you're gonna see a slight RPM drop, feel buffeting. You're gonna put carb heat in, and then see a little bit more of a drop, and then it'll gradually increase, and the buffeting will go.
I would accept that. Anybody have questions on that one?
I do.
I wrote an essay on this.
What's that? I think Hector's talking. What's that, Hector?
I got a question.
Yeah.
Does it matter if it is a fixed propeller?
Say it again.
It doesn't matter that it is a fixed pitch propeller.
It really does. It matters a
It
lot.
does. Okay.
Yes, it does. Because if it's a fixed pitch propeller, you're going to reference the engine RPM. If it's a constant speed propeller, you're going to reference the manifold pressure gauge. Because
okay.
in a fixed pitched propeller, you're going to start, there's nothing to change but the RPM. But in a constant speed propeller, the propeller is going to start changing its pitch angle. It's going to start flattening out. The prop's going to do whatever it has to do to keep that engine at that RPM to a point. So it'll go flatter and flatter and flatter.
So yeah, that's a relationship then.
Yep.
Okay.
And so because it keeps going flat, the RPM is going to stay the same, but you see the manifold pressure drop.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions on this? Cool. All right. We're up to 33 people. So let me see, who are we missing? Janet make it in? No.
I just came in.
Who's
I
that?
came in too late a little bit.
I see that. I know. I gave you some slack. All right. Let's fix this up. Update question. All right. So if anybody has a specific problem, they took the test, something didn't work out technologically, they didn't understand something, send me a little group text, send me an email, something, and I'll give you, try and work something out with you. So. All right, moving on. When we last talked, I was torturing you. I'm still here with this drawing. And one of the things about teaching is you're always supposed to tell your students why you need to know something. And sometimes I tell you a little bit ahead of time, and then sometimes I wait until we're well into it. And then I come back at you with, why do we have to know this? Right about the time you're ready to give up. And so let's start right there with, why do we need to know this? Why is this something that's important to us? And I'm gonna be honest with you, maybe not a lot of this is very important about learning about pressure carburetors. You could probably do an entire career in general aviation and not really care much about a pressure carburetor other than a few things about you need to keep them wet. And there's some stuff about when they are overhauled and boxed up, they have oil in them, which we'll talk about. And so you have to flush the oil out. Other than that, you probably don't need to know all of this stuff. But here's where you do need to know this and where this really starts to matter a lot. And that is to be a decent mechanic, no matter what you're working on, general aviation, large turbine aircraft, there's going to come a time in your career, there's coming a lot of times, probably weekly, if not daily, if you're troubleshooting, where you have to look at some sort of chart like this and figure out what's going on. And so I think the greatest exercise about all of this is just something that is about trying to understand a hydraulic system and figuring out what makes it work. Because even through the program, there's going to be a lot of other things like this, especially landing gear, which you can see landing gear is a whole nother system where you have to look at a drawing and you have to figure it out, because there's not always going to be somebody who is going to have a YouTube that is going to explain it, excuse me, from one end to the other. There we go. I'm just going to choke on myself. So it's really good to get into learning about this stuff and figure out the nuances, because then you take this and you apply it to the next thing and the next thing. And before you know it, you're able to look at this stuff and just go, oh, this isn't hard. I can do this. It's just a simple little drawing. It's just fluid dynamics. And so hopefully you get to that point even before you get done with this.
Kevin.
Yep.
On this case, on this carburetor, if we look at it, it will be more for us to just like pinpoint an error, because we're not going to fix it, right? We had to send it out to be fixed to a shop.
I would. There's no way you'd catch me trying to fix one of these things. In fact, it was kind of funny. I won't tell you who it was. Somebody in the local aviation industry around us last year about this time walked in with one of these things. Hey, you got a carb bench? I'm like, yeah, we do have that carburetor bench. Yeah, well, I want you to run my pressure carb. What? Why would you want me to do this? Well, you know, it's leaking, it's doing this, it's, you know, it really doesn't look like it's a very good carburetor, and we just want to kind of see how bad it is before we put it back on and run it. I'm like, yeah, no. I will not go near this with my carb bench. I will not take that responsibility. I don't, you know, you need to do the right thing, and you need to send it to somebody who's certified to work on these things. So like I said, you won't even catch me opening up one of these things in our own lab, because I don't think I get it back together. There are some itty bitty tiny little springs and stuff in there. And it's some things are better left, in my opinion. You don't touch them unless you really have the special know-how. And I don't own a book for one of these. So not going to catch me working on one of these. And I didn't out in the field, and I ran an overhaul shop, and we did have an accessory overhaul shop. We did not touch these. To the same thing, I would probably never try and open up a Bendix fuel injection system, especially the flow divider I would, but because that's only got 2 parts. But the fuel servo, no way. Did a lot of work on Continental stuff. They don't scare me nearly as bad, and you'll see why. But still, unless you have a flow bench for them, you don't mess with them. So, all right, let's go. I told you I would go back through this. So I'm going to go through it again, and then we're going to go back and we're going to write some notes, and then we can kind of go back and forth. But I think if you can see it in your mind and be able to kind of work with it, I did give you a copy of this in Canvas for the lab, I believe it is, where you could have actually printed out one of the, hey, look at Scott's got it. Way to go, Scott. All right. So, all right. So going back to this, we have chambers A, B, C, D, and E. And whenever I say that little chambers A, little chamber B, it always makes you think of Cat in the Hat, because they have the little.
Do you got the laser pointer, please?
Well, all right, laser pointer. I was going to draw on it. Laser pointer. Okay, so A, B, C, D, and E. A, now if you don't remember what A is, so what? I don't care if you remember. Just follow this up, go over here. It goes to the impact tube. So A is impact pressure. B comes over here and it goes to venturi. I go A and B, and I like how this is drawn with this right here, because it kind of separates A and B as the air metering force. So A is going to put pressure to the right. Hopefully this is to the right to you, to the right. B is going to have a suction, which is going to pull the diaphragm to the right. So A plus B is air metering force. Also, if you forget, you can look down here, impact air venturi, air unmetered, metered. All right, fuel comes into fuel inlet through the screen into chamber E. So in chamber E, it is going to represent fuel pressure. In fact, it says that right up here, fuel pressure, so that's fuel inlet pressure. Now you notice over here, we got this funky looking thing right here. This is a float and a needle, just like you saw in especially the Marvel Schebler, where it was all upside down. So it's like, what the heck? We got a float in here? Well, we do, and it's all about the vapor return. So I want you to think about the fact that if this is working correctly, fuel is going to come in through here and is going to fill this all the way to the top, taking this float and going and locking this off. So under normal operations, this little needle and seat is closed. But as fuel bubbles find their way into the carburetor, you don't want fuel bubbles running through your system. That's going to mess it up. So if the fuel, any air that gets in here, the air is going to bubble up to the top and start filling this chamber up. And as it fills up, the fuel level is going to come down. And as the fuel level comes down, the little float is going to drop, and it is going to burp all of that air out. So once that opens, all the air burps through here, and it goes vapor return. It goes to the fuel tank. So right back to the fuel tank with some fuel and some bubbles, and just burps it right back into the fuel tank. And then when all of the air burps back out of it, the float level is going to come up, and there it goes. So then the question is, what happens if the float sticks in the up position? Then if it sticks in the up position, what's going to happen is that all of that bubbles and stuff that accumulates can't go anywhere. So it's just going to keep going and going until it finds its way through here, and then it's going to burp through the system and potentially give you some air bubbles out. So the engine may stumble a little bit or run momentarily a little bit lean as the bubbles work their way through. If the float were to stick in the down position, in other words, this is constantly open, then what happens? The fuel comes in. This is not a big passageway. So it's going to find its way through here, and it's just going to keep running right back to the tank. So it's not going to hurt anything. In fact, you're going to see some carburetors, they just do that rather than add a moving component. It's like, forget about it. Just pump it back to the tank. Just make it small. We'll just keep running fuel back to the tank. It'll take the fuel air with it. So down is really not a problem. Up is a little bit more of a problem momentarily. So, all right, fuel comes in through the poppet valve, and the poppet valve idle is held open with the idle spring because air metering force is insufficient. But once we have sufficient air metering force, then the poppet will move back and forth based upon, number one, air metering force and fuel metering force. So fuel metering force is going to be a combination of D minus C, because as fuel enters in here, it pushes on the diaphragm to the left and tries to close it. Fuel comes into C, back through all of this around over here, up into here. So the fuel pressure in C is always going to be constant. So that is always going to be at, we're going to say 5 PSI. Why? Because this is 5, and 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 it's going to be 5 over here, and it's going to be 5 all the way to right there. Once I get past that, I have no guarantees for what the fuel pressure is because I have two restrictions. One right there. Go back to my laser pointer. I have one restriction right there. And I have another restriction right there, and another one there, and another one here. So on this side of the restriction, and another one here, then I have no idea what the fuel pressure is because it's just whatever it is in D. But everything else is going to be 5. So we know that A goes to the right, B goes to the right, C goes to the right. So A plus B plus C should equal whatever D is, And if A, B, and C is greater, it's going to open the poppet valve, open this restriction until D equals it. If A, B, or B and C decrease, then it's going to pull this back and then decrease D until we're back into equilibrium. So equilibrium is always going to be the key word to that. All right, we caught up with that. That was a lot. Okay, so back to here. We know about our equilibrium. Fuel is going to come through here. If we're in idle, this right here is connected mechanically to the throttle. And so it's just a mechanical slider. If the throttle is all the way closed, then this is going to be most all the way closed. As you open up the throttle, this is just going to keep moving more and more until the impact tube and venturi air metering force start to work. It's already pre-programmed by the engineer. So by the time A and B start to work, this is just out of the way and has no meaning once it's out of idle. So we come up here to the main metering jet, which you guys know what that is. And then we have the economizer, or if you want to call it a power enrichment. The power enrichment is going to open at high power settings. So whenever the fuel pressure in D is up, and it's going to go up because A and B went up. So if A and B go up, poppet goes up wider, pressure in D goes up. Pressure in D goes up, it's going to come through here before the jet and press on that diaphragm. So when this pressure here is greater than 5 plus spring, it opens up and gives fuel 2 ways to get through. So fuel is now going this way and this way. So we have extra fuel, which makes it power enrichment, but it's called an economizer. Off here to the right, we have something called a de-richment valve. We're going to discuss de-richment valves later on, or exactly how it works. But this has to do with the ADI system, which is alcohol detonation injection, anti-detonation injection, which is a combination of water and alcohol. And so we talked about extra fuel does provide cooling, but and we proved that with EGT and CHT, and we saw with this EGT and CHT gauges that if we go quite a bit on the rich side, everything starts to cool down. So, okay, no doubt that fuel provides cooling. But you also know that excessive fuel, the more fuel we add, the further away we're going to get from best power. That's a bad thing, right? So if we're going full throttle, it's because we want best power. So I go full throttle to get best power, but the stupid carburetor adds a whole bunch of fuel, which robs me from my power. So if I could pull back the mixture, which some people would pull back the mixture and then manually lean it out, get back to best power, you're good, but you're going to lose cooling. And at the same time, you're really, and this doesn't really talk about it, but you have to recognize you're getting into that red zone. You don't want that. So these older engines had this system that would actually inject water with a little bit of alcohol. Now the alcohol was there to keep the water from freezing, and there's some oil in it too. So it's water with a little bit of water soluble oil and alcohol. So the water soluble oil keeps the parts from rusting, and the alcohol keeps the water from freezing. So what happens is at these super high power settings, they'll lean out the carburetor and then add the water in there. And so the water provides, number one, cooling. So you have cooling, you get to pull the carburetor back to best power. So you have best power, you find your extra cooling with the water, and you get a little boost of power because that water that's being injected turns to steam, and the steam then expands and pushes on the piston. So it's kind of a win-win-win. So then of course you say, well, why don't they just use water injection all the time? Well, then you have to have a big water tank. And so they didn't want to do that. So what happens is when the ADI system is turned on, so normally this is open. You can see it because it's kind of drawn in sort of a normal open position. So we have a little jet, right there. And we have a little bit of fuel going this way. So normally have a little bit of fuel going that way. But when I turn on the ADI system, the water injection system, you can see that water pressure is going to come down here, press on the diaphragm and shut this down. So that's going to shut down some of that fuel. And the reason why it's shut down the fuel, and I'm glad about that, is because we want it to be leaner. So shuts down that extra fuel that was going this way, and now it makes it a little bit leaner. Kind of compensates for the economizer, if you will. It's sort of it's kind of the way I look at it. So you added the economizer, but you didn't want it, so just shut this down. It's the same way in my head. And so now later in the system, and it doesn't show it here on this drawing at all, later in the system, you've got this water injection. We'll say it's over here. It's injecting water at a different location. So, but we just had to lean out the carb. So we lean out the carburetor, and and here's our manual mixture control, which you understand, comes around here. Here's my pressure relief valve, discharge nozzle. The reason why this is 5 PSI is because this opens up as much as it needs to keep this at 5 PSI. If the 5 tries to drop to a 4, this is going to close, boost it back to 5. If I put more fuel in here and it tries to go to 6, this will open up and bring it right back to 5. So that's why it's 5, because we have a pressure relief nozzle situation right there.
Kevin?
Yeah.
On the ADI system, there's a pump there, right?
Yeah, there's a whole different system.
Okay, and there's a tank too, right? Okay.
So the only part of the carburetor, and we're going to talk about ADI system, but the only part of the carburetor that really deals with the ADI is just the de-richment valve. It's the only thing on here. So otherwise it's a completely other system. And we will talk about that here in the next day or two. MJ, your pictures are just disturbing. Every time I look over to my left and I see this, I'm like, what is wrong with this guy? Can somebody help him take a normal picture? He won't even answer. He's gone right now. MJ, are you even with us? Uh-oh.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
Don't worry, I'm here.
Okay. All right, so let me think. That is all of that stuff. Idle mixture. The only thing we really haven't talked about here, and I don't really get into the primer system, but it's just a solenoid that opens it up, and I'm not gonna worry about that with you guys now. Okay, is we have this accelerator pump, and this is kind of a goofy little thing, and it really tricks people up. But again, this just has to be something that you will get used to. You're going to get experience with reading these things, and you're just going to have to, you'll figure it out. You have to. But one of the things I want to caution you against, and so everybody kind of pay attention, this is one of the new terms. It's called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias is something that you believe it to be true, so you will look for all evidence to make it true. And you cannot use confirmation bias when you use this stuff. So it's kind of like saying, you know, if I said, well, you know, to use today's news, coronavirus isn't dangerous. Okay, so I'm going to look at every single news story I can find about somebody who got the coronavirus, like Tom Hanks and his wife, who I guess have it, but yet you didn't hear anything bad about it. Now they're home and, you know, smiles and say, oh, see, it's not bad. So I'm going to look at all those news stories. Okay, it's the same way with stuff like this. I get people who want it to work a certain way and will do everything within their power to make it work that way and try to convince me that it works that way, even though they're wrong. So starting with things like these little check balls right here. I wonder if I can, oh yeah, where's my zoom? So starting with those little check balls, and you can just look at them and you should be able to determine instantly which way they go. So we can look at this one right up here. Can you see the little hand? I don't know, hopefully the hand works. I lose my,
yeah, we can see it.
Can? Good.
Yes.
I lose my drawing ability and everything else when I'm in this mode. Well, I just pulled it back out, didn't I? All right, so damn thing. Okay, so if we're looking at this little ball, the ball can only go to the left. It's the only way it can go. It can't go to the right. The ball is sitting on its seat. Everybody hope can see that. This ball is down here on its seat. Hope everybody can see that. So that means that, and I got to go back to normal.
Spacebar.
Well, I hit escape, but thank you. I appreciate that. In fact, I was telling Phil was, when he was getting ready to do this, I'm like, Phil, don't worry about it. You got enough smart guys in your class. If you just get stuck, there's always a great student that'll jump in and help you. So I always appreciate that. I really do. Okay, so I need a different color, just some things in life. Okay, so we know that this ball can only go to the left, and we know this one can only go up. And I hope everybody could see that. And this is how you figure things like this out. I'm going to look at it, and I know that, and I know that. And so this right here is a piston. There's a piston there. And so that piston, of course, can go right and it can go left. And it calls it an accelerator pump. So and it's linked to the throttle, right? I'm just reading this stuff, right? So now this means fuel has to go in the accelerator pump because we learned this with Marvel Sheblers. There's a pump and it sucks fuel in. So that means it's going to suck fuel up. It can only suck it in through this way. And I can't tell you how many people tell me, oh no, it goes the other way. No, look at the ball, it doesn't. So this fills up full of fuel when the throttle is pulled back to idle, because we know that, right? Then when I go to accelerate, it's going to move the piston to the left and is going to force fuel out of here, because we know that. That's the only way those two check balls could work. Well, fuel's going to come to here, and now what? Well, do you think that it's going to go back this way and head into here? No, I really don't. That would do nothing for me. Maybe a little bit. You could think, well, it puts a little extra fuel in here, then it has to come around here, then it goes to the medium orifice, then economizer, the enricher. I don't think that would make a really good way of accelerating. All right, let's try this way. So I come up here and I go into this chamber and, oh yeah, what if when I pressed on the accelerator pump, it pressed on the end of the poppet valve and forced the poppet valve to go to the right momentarily? Would that accelerate this thing? Well, wait a minute. Yeah, it would force it open, allow more fuel through here. The fuel would come around through here. And yeah, it's a long way around, but that would make sense for an accelerating system to me. All right. But then what happens? It's got to find some way to unaccelerate. You can't just have this thing open up and then be open all the time. Well, now that explains what this orifice is. So let me go to laser pointer. So when I press on the throttle, fuel comes through here, comes up here. Momentarily, it pressurizes this chamber, which opens the poppet. But then there's an orifice here. Now, that orifice is probably really small. And so now it's going to you can't maintain the pressure. So the pressure starts bleeding off and just comes back into here and bleeds off this way and then back around. And by that point, it's bleeding off so slow, it's not really going to affect E or D or anything else. So that's how that works.
Kevin?
Yeah.
The link to throttle?
Yep.
Is that a physical link?
Yes.
Okay. There's I don't know, aircraft wire or something.
A wire, a rod, part of the throttle. It's just internal. But yes, it is absolutely linked to it.
Okay.
So if the pressure in E is about like 10 psi, maybe
9 to 14.
Okay, so how would it return back to E when there's a pressure going the opposite way?
Ooh, what a good question. Because this little pump right here, you got to think about it. When I pump that in, this is a constant displacement pump. The pressure is going to go up. And so if we followed it through and thought, okay, I'm running along at cruise and I've been at cruise for an hour now. Well, if this is 9 to 14 in here, then it's the same here, it's the same here, it's the same here, it's the same here. So it's the same here. This is gonna be also 9 to 14 up in here, just because it's eventually gonna leak through this little orifice, given enough time. So all this is 9 to 14 anyway. So all I'm looking to do is drop it back down to the 9 to 14. But when I press on the throttle, this accelerator pump is going to pump fuel in here, constant displacement. I don't know what this is gonna go up to. Let's just say it goes up to 20. I don't have that data. I'm just saying it goes up to 20. It's going to leak right back down to 9 to 14 pretty fast through that orifice.
Okay, that makes
It's just
sense.
a momentary thing. I don't have necessarily all the answers on this stuff, but what I've explained to you so far is what I'm going to hold you to as far as the oral goes. And I think you're lucky in some respects because you're the first class that has gotten the complete and full tutorial while I'm recording. So we did record. Ooh, that was a close one.
It sounds like you can repair one of these.
It sounds like you can repair. Well, wait a minute. You think so? Yeah. At first you're thinking, oh man, how hard could this be? But then we have to remember something. Let's see, will this work?
If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Well, it's partly true, but hey, mowing your lawn is easy, and who does their own lawn? It looks a lot more like this. And so once you start looking at it like that, you're like, well, I don't know. That seems kind of more difficult. So, but if you really study this and kind of compare them back and forth, you know, let's which I don't do a lot of, but I'm just going to zoom this in just for fun. There's what we were just talking about, that throttle actuated accelerator pump. And look at that. I mean, here you have a check valve and a check valve. It shows the fuel coming in through here, and then it shows it leaving here, and then it shows it going across here. It just takes a while to find it. Shoot, I don't even know how I'm gonna do it. Back here it is, back going into D. We just have to find where the crossover was, where it goes to this side of A, which I think I did see it just a minute ago. Here we go, through here, back up into here. There's it is to A. There's that little orifice right there, right before it went back in to the chamber. So now it's all there. It's just a lot more difficult. Hang on, let me see if I have something here. I'm trying to remember what I brought home. Yeah. So I do have, I gotta pull you guys up so I can see what I'm showing you. My view. There we go. So you're going to get a chance. This is a PS5. This is a tiny one, comparatively speaking, but we do have a cutaway version of it, and you'll actually get a chance to look at this a little bit on the PS5. So again, this is one I can actually hold with one hand. The one that we're looking at right there, That's that gigantic one in class that I can't actually, I don't even want to lift with two hands. I think it's about 100 and some pounds, I think. No. All right. Back to this. Wrong way. All right, let's write some notes. Give Janet something to do. She keeps telling me via private chat here that she's bored. PlayStation 5. Cameron, what is the PlayStation 5 about? Entertainment.
Now, yeah.
What's that? Oh, you said PS5. Thank you. That now makes more sense. All right. Hey, it doesn't get any more complicated than what we just did. It really doesn't. If you survive that, you've survived the worst of it. If you didn't survive that, you will. All right, main parts. Main parts. Wow, it's almost break time. Main parts of a pressure carb system. Main parts of a pressure carb system. And this is going to be reasonably redundant for us. So we have the throttle unit. Throttle unit. And the throttle unit, as you can imagine, contains and measures the mass airflow to the engine. So controls and measures. It measures the mass airflow to the engine. Measures the mass airflow to the engine. To the engine. And I pulled this out of a book. So the airflow is measured by volume and weight. Airflow is measured by volume, which we know isn't a good thing. We really don't want it by volume, and weight. And the reason why I kind of preference it, I pull out of a book, you have to be careful with that. And I always want to go back and say, well, wait a minute. How and why are you making this claim? How are you getting volume and weight out of this thing? Because if we know that a Stromberg and a Marvel Schebler and all these other just simple carburetors, float carburetors, are not measuring it by weight, then what about this means that you're measuring the air by weight? And so I have to look at it and say, what is different? Well, what is different is, number one, we're adding an impact tube. So is the impact tube adding any sort of more by weight? And I don't really have the answer to that. So I'm going to say partially, but what really sets it for me is that it has an automatic mixture control. And even though it's just called an automatic mixture control, this does sense the weight of the air. So as we go up in altitude, it's going to decrease the impact air coming in, which does give us some semblance of measuring it by weight. And then we have the pure Venturi, which is going to be volume. So thus the terms weight and volume. And while I'm thinking about that, I forgot to mention this today. Why is there a bleed right here? The bleed is there to make the automatic mixture control work. See, that's the answer you should say when I'm asking oral. Why is there a bleed there? You should say, it's there to make the AMC work. Oh, okay. And of course, you know me, my next question would be, why? And because I love that. You say, why? Well, because we have impact air coming in here. And if it doesn't have a way to flow, then the air is just going to come in here and pressurize this, even if there is a restriction over here. I forget. Even if there's a restriction right there, that does not mean that it's really going to work, because you have to have flow for an orifice to work. If you don't have flow, the orifice doesn't work. So I have to have flow. So where do we get my flow? Right through here, up into B and out. So that makes a flow, so that works. There's no way to change your mind on that one. Okay, so airflow is measured by volume and weight. Volume and weight. Yes, I said that. So I am where now? There we go. it contains. It contains 1, the impact tubes. Impact tubes. And it contains the venturi. And I'm going to put this time in parentheses because, oh, it can have plenty of venturis, or at least a couple. So many pressure carbs. Many pressure carbs have multiple venturis. Venturis. And even smaller and may have smaller boost venturis. And it contains the throttle valve. And that, even though it's a few minutes to, is a good place for a break. So I'm going to stop the recording and let you guys take a break.